Welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Lebbing, and I love seeing business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs have massive success in their businesses. Are you ready to reach a higher level in your business? Are you looking to rise to the top and break through the barriers that are holding you back? If this is you, join us on the Mind for Success podcast. Hello and welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Lebbing, and today my guest is Justin Smith. Justin has been in the finance world for over 18 years, and he works with executives, successful professionals. He likes working with people that are ready for their next chapter in life. He's got some unique plans. I thought the timing was perfect because it's the first of the year. So hearing about how he does things and really thinking about some things a little bit differently is going to be a great resource for you. So welcome, Justin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me today. Excited.
Awesome. So I would love to dive right in. I want to hear a little bit about your background. Like how you got started in financial and retirement planning?
Yeah. So my entire career has been in this wealth management industry. And it all started in college. I was in business school, and my favorite course there was taxes, of all things. And I'd always been interested in that as well. Growing up, I was pestering my dad about how taxes work and things like that. I just kind of had an odd fascination about that. That happened to be my favorite course in business school. But instead of going the CPA route, which I thought was going to maybe be a little bit dry for me, and I wanted something a little bit more dynamic, I was really drawn to financial planning. And I started working with a subsidiary of Goldman Sachs doing financial planning, tax planning, retirement planning for corporate executives. And that's kind of been my focus. I've made some various stops along the way, but that's always been my core focus for my entire career is tax-focused planning for complex individual situations. And what I find is the transition into retirement or a hybrid retirement is often one of the most complex points in somebody's personal and financial life. And I like to throw myself in the middle of that complexity because I'm a problem solver. So I just always find myself drawn to that complex web of decisions because I think I can add a lot of value there and help people navigate through that, because it's not something that's easily done without some help and some outside perspective.
Absolutely. I love it. So talk to us a little bit about that concept, hybrid retirement. Hybrid anything. I think people are more open to different choices and things, but yeah, what's your take on that?
Exactly. So I think it's really picked up momentum over the last 2 years in the post-pandemic world, but even before it was building momentum. But when I started, hybrid retirement almost wasn't a thing 20 years ago. Most people were still working for an employer for decades, maybe their entire career, get to 65, then retire. Maybe you collect Social Security or a pension, you have some investments socked away, and you retire to a life of leisure. There were a few people here and there doing a hybrid thing. Maybe they do consulting, maybe they serve on boards, but it was really reserved for the very, high level C-suite type executives. Now, post the 2008 financial crisis, post pandemic, those, trying times are what pushed people out of the comfort zone, off the beaten path, out of necessity into these new ways of thinking. And now everybody knows somebody, a friend or a former colleague, a relative that has maybe retired before 65, jumped off that traditional path and pursued something more interesting. And typically people envy that, right? Because they get to have the best of both worlds. And that's what I want to help people have as well. The fulfillment and purpose from work, maybe the compensation too, if that's important. But then also the freedom and flexibility and autonomy that comes with retirement. I don't think you have to sacrifice either one of those. Why not design a life where you can have it all? So that's what I think is really exciting. Is more people are open to that approach now that they've seen it tested a handful of times over the last 5 or 10 years. And like I said, it does open up a whole host of complicated and dynamic financial planning questions, which is where, again, I love to wade into those waters.
I love it. And it sounds like the lifestyle of an entrepreneur for those of us that have been there a while, just, looking at things a little bit outside of the box.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And, I talk mostly about executives and successful professionals, but a lot of the same fact patterns hold true with entrepreneurs as well. They work in their business, and then one day they sell it. They are not ready or able to usually just flip off that switch. They might take a little time to decompress, but 12, 24 months later, they're almost always back doing something, right? So instead of going into this, vacuum of nothing, maybe start planning ahead, planting seeds a couple of years before that transition so that you can make the most of your time, jump right into whatever your ideal next phase is.
I would imagine for some people that may be a little bit nervous about it. So like losing that other income. So how do you help them replace that paycheck or feel okay with that, to know that they'll be okay long-term wise?
Yep. And that you hit right on the head. The most common questions I always hear is they get to this crossroads. I call it a career crossroads, and they're kind of staring down the traditional path, right? That it's comfortable, it's well-worn, it's proven path, right? But it might not be everything they desire. Now there is this more adventurous path, but there's so many questions that cause them to not go down that path. Am I going to be okay? Where's the money going to come from? What am I going to do about health insurance? Can I afford it? Do I need to keep working? Do I need to save more? All these things spin around in folks' heads, and all that, uncertainty just leads people to stay on the traditional path one more year, one more bonus cycle, whatever it might be. And then they find themselves at 65 looking up and saying, hey, what happened? So I try to encourage people to not ignore those questions, but dig in and embrace them and create a plan to really get yourself to where you really want to be.
Right. So talking, because it's tax season, right? So I was actually thinking about that myself. I'm like, I need to block some time so I can get my stuff together to hand over. What are some strategies that you help people with as far as minimizing taxes?
Yeah, so obviously the tax code is wildly complex, and there are literally thousands of different strategies, and it's all personalized. But when I like to kind of distill it down to a couple simple concepts. And the first one is, when it comes to taxes, is leveling out your lifetime tax burden, right? You don't want to be in the highest possible tax bracket one year and then zero the next year. It can be advantageous to level it out. And it's a relatively simple concept, but as you dig into it, there can be a multitude of different strategies and tactics to do that. But in its simplest terms, that concept, people, they get it, but they might not actually be implementing it, right? So if you are at the tail end of your career, you're probably at your peak earning potential, right? You might be in the highest tax bracket for the rest of your life. So it makes sense to do things that either push income out into the future, into a lower tax year, or accelerate deductions forward to take the maximum advantage of it. On the flip side, maybe you find yourself on the other side of a career transition, the other side of a business sale. You might be in a very low tax bracket, the lowest tax bracket you've seen in decades. Maybe you have a year or two where you pay zero income taxes. That might feel good to not pay anything for a change, but it's also could be a wasted opportunity. You might want to then think about reshaping your balance sheet, accelerating income, doing all sorts of different things to, again, take advantage of low tax brackets. So that's the overarching philosophy I come at tax planning with, is look at not just this year, not just what do I need to do between now and April 15th, but look over multiple years, maybe even multiple decades, and figure out where
Mhm.
are the high points, where are the low points, and how can I smooth that out. That's really how you can get the upper hand on the IRS. Playing the year in, year out, one quarter, 1 year at a time game, that's kind of tax checkers, and the IRS is
Right.
going to win that game. But if you
Right.
want to play tax chess, you have to take that multi-year, even multi-decade approach to minimize your lifetime taxes.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes total sense. And like I said, really good timing, just because I know this is front of mind for people right now. So explain to me this concept of victory lap. How
Yeah.
can a like, what is it? And how can that help me personally, professionally, financially?
Yeah, so that's a term one of my colleagues coined a couple of years back. He wrote a book called Victory Lap Retirement, and
Mhm.
I've always just loved that terminology. So in the show notes, I'll link to a kind of a guided workbook that builds on this topic. But the Victory Lap, the idea is that hybrid approach. Have the best of the professional world and the best of the retirement lifestyle all in one victory lap, right? Don't hit the finish line and stop. Go around the track and up another couple times at your own pace, doing it the way you want to do, but you don't necessarily need to stop running the race, but you can slow down. So that's the victory lap idea. And I talked about the workbook. Again, we go through that victory lap planning process. How do you actually break off of that traditional path and do the hybrid approach, the non-traditional approach? So we work through lay out the whole process and framework. We work through with clients, and that the guidebook that is in the show notes, it is kind of a do-it-yourself guide where you can get started on your own to start thinking through some of the critical questions that you need to answer.
Now that you brought it up, I wasn't going to talk about it until the end, but there's no rules. It's my podcast, right? So, so can you talk us through that workbook? Because I remember you showed me when we first met, and I just think it's a really great resource. So talk a little bit about that, because I want to encourage people to download it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I built that because I wanted to help more people explore this path, right? So the first half of the book or so, it's a 35-page PDF. You can chew on it over the course of a couple hours on the weekend. That's what it was designed. It's not heavy lifting. It's not a ton of homework, but it's it's meaty enough that you can actually turn it into some action. So the first half is kind of talking about this victory lap approach, some different stories about how it's worked for other people's, some ways to approach hybrid work, because oftentimes we're just, we are used to being the senior executive vice presidents of such and such, and thinking of anything other than that is difficult. So we've got a framework that helps you think about, what do I enjoy doing? What kind of work do I want to do? And then help you think of ideas for what that victory lap career could be. And then the second half of the book is working through the exact process I work through with clients. Kind of big picture, it's a 3-step process. We want to figure out your vision for the future, really crystallize where you want to go, what you want your ideal future to look like. It might just be a sentence or two, but that is going to be the North Star of the plan we put together, your victory lap plan. After we've got that vision, we can start filling in different goals to support that vision. We want to have health and wellness goals. We want to have relationship goals. We want to have time goals, financial goals, work goals, hobbies, etc. All of those goals should be in support, again, of that broader vision, because your broader vision probably encapsulates all those different elements, right?
Right.
And then once we've got those goals listed out, again, the goals that are supporting the broader vision, we can then come up with an action plan to make progress towards meeting those goals. And the back third of the book or so focuses on the financial action plan you need to put together to make this all work. And in the financial action plan, there's really 5 things that I think are critical that you have to pay attention if you're going to pursue this victory lap approach or the hybrid approach. We've already talked about two of them. The first one is figuring out your cash flow, right? Figuring out where the money's going to come from. Is it going to be sustainable? Because it's not all going to come out of your paycheck or out of your business. It's going to come from multiple different streams. There's going to be variability. Again, the complexity level ratchets up. You need to be planning that out. The second thing we want to think about is health insurance. Again, people will stop dead in their tracks with this approach because they don't know where to go for health insurance. They might keep working till 65 just because that's the only place they can see as an easy solution to get health insurance. But I encourage people, there are a lot of outside the box and newer ways to get health insurance. The ACA, which is relatively new, less than 10 years old, allows people across the country to buy into health insurance that was previously not available. So that's been a tailwind and a game changer in this hybrid retirement approach. There might also be potential for, again, part-time work or a special arrangement at work to get health insurance, but at a less than full-time workload. So don't let that stop you. Just think through your different options on health insurance. You need to think through employee benefits and Social Security, all those different things. So from your 401k accounts to pensions to if you have executive compensation, or if you are a business owner and you have a sale of the business, that all kind of wraps into that category. So many moving parts, so many timelines and deadlines. I have kind of a timeline that you can start laying those components so you can see how they interact with each other. So that's kind of a third catch-all bucket around benefits. The fourth one we talked about, which is tax planning. You need a multi-year or multi-decade tax plan to make sure things are efficient. We don't want you spending 5 years in the top tax bracket and then the next 5 paying zero income taxes. We want to level it out with a variety of different strategies we talk about in the book. And the last one, and only last, is investments, right? I am technically an investment advisor, but that's not where I put my focus on. It's obviously a critically important piece, but it shouldn't be at the front of the train. It really, the investment portfolio is there to support the rest of your plan. So once you get all those other moving pieces figured out, then you can say, how do I need to structure my investments to support the rest of this plan, to support my cash flow, to support my long-term goals, and dial in the right amount of risk, not too much, not too little, dial in the right amount of cash, etc. So that is the kind of what we work through when we work with clients, and also lay out in the book is helping people solve for those 5 components. There might be many other ones too, but those 5 are guaranteed to pop up for every single situation.
Yeah, I loved the book because it's enough information. I mean, it's a lot of information, but it's also in a bite-sized chunk that literally, like you said, you could probably knock it out in a weekend or a couple of hours.
Yep. Yeah. So if I got frustrated in the first half of a football game, I could pick it up, get through most of it, and then check in at the end of the fourth quarter.
There you go. I love it. Okay. So I want to give everybody a way to link with you. And I know we're going to put your LinkedIn in the show notes along with the resource. Thank you so much for going through that, because I think it just gives us so much, and so that they can pick those up. Do you have, I'll ask you one last question. If there was like one tip that you could give to our audience on something that they could do going forward in 2023, what would that be?
It's make a plan.
Okay.
Right? We all have big ideas in our heads, but the reason they don't come true and the reason New Year's resolutions often don't happen is because there's nothing behind it. There's not a plan behind it. And that's, again, why I built this workbook the way I did, because I want it to be a literal, you can print this off your printer, and by the time you work through all these exercises, you can have a 1-page plan for how you're going to design your next chapter. And that is going to be more impactful than just about anything you can do. Having an actionable plan to getting to where you want to go.
Absolutely. And that applies in all kinds of areas, not
Absolutely.
just finances. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that you said that. Well, I want to thank you for being on today. This was a lot of value. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening and encourage you to download the booklet that he has, connect with Justin on LinkedIn. And thanks you all for listening.
Are you ready to break through the barriers that are holding you back and reach a higher level in your business in just 4 hours? Be sure to click the link today and join other high-achieving professionals that have worked with Kimberly Lebbing to accelerate their success.